But this is really a kind of history of the association, and if you miss any of that, after I have given my talk, our book will be distributed, and you will find my speech, in fact, on the back of the book, so you don't have to listen to me. The Muswell Hill and Fortis Green Association was formed in 1948, and it is now impossible to find out what was its original purpose, especially as our archives only date back to 1965, and I have all those archives at home, would you believe it? It was a kind of social club where like-minded people with time on their hands got together for a chat. Later, local issues were also discussed on an informal basis. The annual subscription was 2 shillings, equivalent to 10 pence in today's money. It was only in the late 60s that they formed themselves into a kind of pressure group and started speaking out on behalf of the local residents. The earliest newsletter we have talks about possible rate increases, the future of Alexander Palace, and hooliganism. It was planned to appear twice a year with advertising. The committee, which was formed at the time, met about 2 to 3 times a year, and there were no members' meetings. I joined the association in the early 90s, 30 years ago, and did not take an active role until 1999, when I joined the committee and was asked to be responsible for events and meetings. There were only occasional meetings, and with no plans to hold them on a regular basis, I decided to instigate 4 meetings a year with an annual outing in June. This turned out to be a successful formula, and you will be amazed to hear that until this year, I had organized 125 meetings and outings, mainly of local interest. In May 2001, I was persuaded to become chairman of the association, and who would have thought that after 22 years, I become the longest serving chair. So what did I find? The association was considered to be old-fashioned, the occasional newsletters boring, there was no dialogue with members or any of the official bodies or the press. We were not considered relevant locally, and certainly not a mouthpiece for residents of Muswell Hill and Fortis Green. There were no plans for the future, and we desperately needed new younger committee members. We had a manual card index system for membership records, and the membership secretary had to post a new card every year on which was written the year and the name of the member, as Eugene will, I'm sure, remember. The annual membership fee was £6 and £3 for those over 60. Our newsletters were distributed by hand by a group of volunteers in handwritten envelopes. I realized immediately that changes had to be made. My first task was, despite complaints, to recruit a computer-literate membership secretary and to put all the membership details on computer. At the same time, I decided to put up the membership fee to £8. My next task was to contact the large number of members who had not paid their membership fee for several years. Nothing new there. We did this by phone and by going from door to door, and very soon we had recovered most of the outstanding fees. The next step was to look at the newsletter. We increased the frequency from the occasional 1-page version to 4 and later to 6 editions a year, changed the typeface and the color, and made it more interesting by including local stories and events and more input by committee members. We started distributing it not just to members, but also to the local libraries, cafes and pubs with the help of 20 deliverers. I introduced a regular editorial meeting. As you know, the newsletter is now 8 pages long and in full color, full of interesting and varied articles and regular profile of members. Let me now list some of our outstanding and most memorable projects and events through the years since I took over. In 2000, to encourage local residents to join our association and at the same time to publicize our activities, we had to come up with new ideas. So I decided to hold the Muswell Hill Picture Show. We invited members to participate with photos and paintings, and the subsequent 90 entries were displayed at the Birchwood Centre. I asked Lynn Featherstone, our local councillor at the time, to present the prizes, and the event created good press coverage. I realized that the time had come to have our own website. I appointed a web manager and we launched it in January 2002. It had 7 pages of basic information, but within a year we had already had nearly 15,000 visitors. After many changes, by 2008 we had 56,000 visitors from all over the world. Since then, our website has increased, as you heard in my report, in size and contents with 60 pages, archive material, including old newsletters, photos, videos, and many more items. The next 2 successful events were the 2003 and 4 front garden competitions. We received 20 entries for the first event and 35 for the second. At the same time, I appointed our first tree monitor, who, working with the council, checked all new applications for tree work in our area. By then, I was able to attract many local speakers to our meetings. By far the largest and most successful meeting I organized was the joint meeting with the local resident, the world-famous organist Jennifer Bate. This event took place in 2003 at the St. James's Church, and 200 people attended. We raised £2,000 towards the restoration of the organ. In 2004, I appointed 2 members of a graffiti team who patrolled until now our shopping centre, removing small graffiti and reporting major problems to the council. In 2005, I had several meetings with the council to highlight the lack of proper CCTV coverage in our area. As a result, several important changes were made to improve the system, and 2 new cameras were installed. Also in 2005, I discovered the disused and long-lost Grove Lodge garden path towards the bottom of Muswell Hill, originally created in 1945, and I asked the council to restore it. This was agreed, and we were given a grant of £5,000. The project was completed a year later, and included laying a new path, installing finger posts at both ends, and strengthening the retaining walls. We now undertake occasional visits to keep the path clear. This was also the year when we introduced regular email messages to our members, giving information on local events and forthcoming meetings. In 2006, we persuaded the council to refurbish the pocket park opposite the John Baird, now the Village Green pub, and I negotiated for a new iron railing to be put up. At the same time, we applied to the council to erect a community notice board, which we agreed to manage and maintain, and is available to be used by all local organizations as well as publicizing our events. It was in 2004 that I started thinking about all the famous people who lived in our borough. After approaching the council suggesting that we should consider commemorating our famous residents with a green plaque, I organised a subcommittee and we drew up a list of potential candidates such as Oliver Tambo, W.J. Collins and W. Heath Robinson, among others. This was agreed by the council, and they also agreed to fund the project. We found a plaque maker, and the first plaque was put in position in Hillfield Park in 2007. Further plaques were agreed and put up all over Haringey, but after 13 plaques, the council stopped funding the project, even though we still had at least 15 potential candidates to consider. In 2006, on behalf of the association, I was delighted to receive the award of Recyclers of the Year, and in 2007, we received the Better Haringey Best Community Initiative Award. In 2008, the first time the newsletter was sent out by email to members. In 2008, the pocket park at the top of Muswell Hill was restored and replanted. Also in 2008, in November, I persuaded the council to fund the repair of the famous Langton clock in Muswell Hill Broadway, a local landmark since 1899. It was taken down, lovingly repaired by a local clockmaker, and after 2 years was put back in working order. Unfortunately, since that time, there have been several problems maintaining the clock, mainly due to the fact that the mechanism is situated in somebody's flat behind the clock. John Kendall, the clockmaker, and I have made several visits to the flat, and I'm still hoping that eventually both clocks and clock faces will tell the correct time. We live in hope. In 2009, we took over the 2 abandoned beds on the corner of Corney Hatch Lane and Pages Lane. We transformed the grass verges by planting bushes and bulbs, and we continue to maintain and replant the beds when needed, creating a welcome green site at the entrance to Muswell Hill. In 2010, I decided to write a book about the history of our association. It was published 2 years later and quickly sold out. In 2013, after the council stopped looking after the flower boxes at the roundabouts in Muswell Hill Broadway, we took over and have since regularly replanted and maintained each box. In the next few years, we held a photo competition in 2015, had stalls in 2016 and 17 at Midsummer Muswell and Very Merry Muswell events, and held our Odd One Out competitions in 2017 and 2018. In 2019, we received from Waitrose £200 under their Green Token scheme for good causes. And also in 2019, we took part in the wonderful Muswell Winter Festival. I want to thank each and every one of the past and present committee members who have supported me so loyally through the years, and who helped to bring about all the changes and improvements we have achieved. My committees, without exception, were hard-working, dedicated, enthusiastic, and motivated. In particular, I want to mention the following, some in various jobs. Eugene Meyerson, who is sitting here, 1977 to 2008. Bill Tyler, 1977 to 2017. Sandra Howell, 1984 to 2019, Monica Myers, 1988 to 2011, Jerry Saunders, 1998 to 2008, without whose help my book would not have been published. John Crompton, the only committee member who has been with me since I became chair all those years ago, first looking after planning, then treasurer, and finally as conservation officer, as well as honorary secretary. Brian Livingstone, who has been a member of the committee since 2008, looking after matters relating to environment, green spaces, and reporting on local police activities as chair of the Fortis Green Safer Neighbourhood panel. I would also like to express my thanks and gratitude to Jacqueline, who joined the committee in 2011 and became treasurer in 2012. She has been responsible for huge improvements in the way we look after our money and collect members' fees. Due to her tireless efforts, I never had to worry about money, the association's, not mine. Nick Barr, who took over the planning portfolio in 2013 and kept an eye on all planning applications. Duncan Neal, who has kept us informed of developments at Alexander Palace and Park since 2014. Alex Vincenti, who was our membership secretary from 2014 until 2018 and has managed the website since 2020, and recently started videoing our committee meetings and members' meetings. A very special thank you to Alex for helping and advising various committee members, especially on membership and treasury matters, and for editing and updating my book and adding many new pages. Christine Morris, who has been an outstanding editor of our newsletter for 7 years. Zoe Norfolk, who has also served for 7 years, has used social media to send out information about us, is responsible for our notice board, and has been involved in many other activities on our behalf. Thanks are also due to the rest of the committee, Agnes Gomery, Nigel Clark, Laura Bugden, and Chris White. Some of you will also remember Peter Thompson, Dawn Miles, Chris Barker, Pat Bloomfield, the Campbells, who are here, Denise Heathcote, who is here, Denise Feeney, and more recently Tony Wells, George Danker, Richard Marmalade, and Lara Maze, who is also here. And finally, looking back, I cannot believe that during 22 years I did not miss one committee meeting or one members meeting. Crazy. I must have been crazy. What fun we had. So here we are at the end of a huge chunk of my life. I'm proud of my contribution to the history of the association. I'm proud of my contribution to life in Muswell Hill. I'm proud of the fantastic teams I worked with. And I'm proud of what we have achieved through hard work and perseverance. So after 22 years, it is now time to hand over to my successor, whoever that person is. My hope is that the association will continue to thrive and go from strength to strength in years to come. Thank you for listening to me.